Okay, so this is just a video to review variables with you. I know that you know from science and math class in years past that variables are the things that are changing. Okay, and because they're changing, often in math, they're not represented by a number, but a letter. And they're represented by that letter so that they can vary and be different, represent different numbers while we're solving. Oftentimes, you'll see X and Y being used, but those are not the only variables that are used. So let's first talk about our independent variable. The independent variable is the variable whose change isn't affected by any other variable in the experiment. Oftentimes it's represented with the letter X, and this stands alone. Not affected by another variable. Okay, so the dependent variable here is often represented by the letter Y, and it changes based on the independent variable. For example, if something is happening over time to measure speed, that would be distance over time here. The distance depends on how much time someone or something has been moving. Okay, you determine the time, you change it. All right, in 4 seconds, what is the distance? All right, not in this distance, it's how much time. It's how much, I'm sorry, yes. So, I have a couple examples here for us to talk about. The first one says, you want to figure out which brand of microwave popcorn pops the most kernels so you can get the most value for your money. You test different brands of popcorn to see which bags pop the most popcorn kernels. So we've got two variables here that are changing. I see the number of popcorn kernels, and I also see the brands. Okay, so what's happening here is I am changing the brands, and based on the brands, the number of popcorn kernels will change. So therefore, the brands is the independent variable, and the popcorn is the dependent variable. Our next one here. You want to see which type of fertilizer, that's already giving me a clue about which one of the variables are, types of fertilizer, helps plants grow faster. So you add different brands of fertilizers to each plant and see how tall they grow. So the fertilizer and the height that they're growing are going to be our two variables here. So how tall they will go will depend on what kind of fertilizer is being used. Therefore, how tall they grow is the dependent, and the type of fertilizer is the independent. So now we're getting into some in which both can be represented by numbers. I realize both of these you don't necessarily number fertilizer. So this says you're interested in rising sea temperatures and how rising sea temperatures impact algae life. So that's giving me clues right away. The sea temperature is one variable, and how it impacts algae life is another. So you design an experiment that measures the number of algae in a sample of water. So that's how I'm measuring the impact on algae life from a specific ocean site under varying temperatures. So based on the temperature, the number of algae will be different. So therefore, the number of algae depend on what temperature the sea is. All right, so Sea temperatures is independent, number of algae is dependent. The last example that we have, I know it's tiny. You spent 50 hours this summer practicing basketball. Every week you are committed to practice an additional 5 hours. Write an equation that represents this situation. So I can see here that I have hours practicing basketball is one variable. And every week I'm committed to do something else. So what's tricky about this is it's both times. This is hours and this is week. So which one is dependent and which one is independent? Well, the hours practicing, total hours practicing, will depend on how many weeks it's been through the year. So the weeks, the number of weeks is the independent variable, and the hours practicing basketball is the dependent variable based on the number of weeks.